ENG 회원 도시와 평생학습 관계자 여러분, 오늘 이 웨비나 진행을 맡게 된
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
교육 전문위원 김호석이라고
My name is
합니다.
Kim Ho-seok, leading the Lifelong Learning Center team at the Lifelong Learning Department of Goyang City. Nice to meet you.
웨비나는 고양시와 UIL이 공동 주관해서 진행하는 행사인데요.
Today's webinar is co-hosted by Goyang City and UNESCO UIL.
GNLC 이 도시들의 여러 가지 사례와 성과를
Today, we're going to talk about the achievements and experiences of UNESCO GNLC in 2022. Today, we provide simultaneous interpretation in Korean, English, and French on Zoom. And the webinar is broadcast live on YouTube in the Goyang City Lifelong Learning channel in Korean. And after the webinar, the English and French version of the webinar will be uploaded on YouTube. Now we're going to start the webinar. In order to welcome the participants, Mr. Raul Valles-Gutierrez, the Policy Chief of the UNESCO UIL, will deliver his welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, authorities of Goyang, dear members of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities. I am delighted to welcome you to today's webinar organized by the Learning City of Goyang in the Republic of Korea. And as we approach to the end of the year, today's event provides us with a valuable opportunity to look back at everything that has been achieved in 2022, both by members of the GNLC and the wider international lifelong learning community. This particular webinar, therefore, marks a meaningful conclusion to the year, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the city of Goyang, led by Mayor Dong Hwang Lee, for bringing us all together today. Goyang has long been an active member of the GNLC and has in recent years taken on a leading role in several of the network activities. In its capacity as a coordinating city for our thematic cluster on education planning, monitoring, and evaluation in learning cities, Goyang convened an official cluster meeting in November 2020 for an exchange of best practice, insights, progress, and challenges in education planning, and for discussing the measurement of learning city development. During this meeting, Goyang presented its own system of learning city indicators, providing leadership and an inspiring example for other cities to build, and by sharing their own experiences on various aspects of planning, monitoring, and evaluation. Furthermore, Goyang has contributed case studies to key GNLC publications, including our compilation of learning cities' responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, and has in recent years invited international lifelong learning stakeholders to the Goyang City Forum for meaningful exchanges. During today's webinar, after hearing from Mayor Dong Hwang Lee, we will reflect on some major events and agreements initiated or advanced this year by UNESCO, by the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and by the global community. This has been a period of significant conceptual shifts in our understanding of education and learning, reflected in UNESCO's Future of Education Initiative and Transformation Education Summit. We have also advanced the cause of adult learning and education for all within a lifelong learning perspective, when we gather for the 7th International Conference on Adult Education, what is called Confintea 7 in Marrakesh. On a practical level, the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning has this year issued its flagship publication, Making Lifelong Learning a Reality, a handbook, which contains concrete guidance on how to promote lifelong learning at national level and, of course, in cities. We will then turn our focus on the GNLC by recalling some of the network's many achievements in 2022, a year in which we welcome many new members, we celebrate World Cities Day, and we organize a webinar series on lifelong learning for health in cities, to name a few examples. In doing so, we will identify some broad directions for our work as we move into 2023. We are also fortunate to be able to enjoy presentations from several leading learning cities before hearing from some of you in attendance today. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, and many thanks once again to the City of Goyang. I look forward to all the insights and discussions. Thank you very much.
본부장님 마이크를 라울 본부장님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
고양시에 대한 여러 가지 활동에 대해서도 소개해 주셔서
So you introduced many different activities regarding Goyang City. Thank you very much for doing so. So like Raul said, I hope that this webinar will be a great opportunity for us to share various experiences of us, and so that we can advance moving forward. Next, we will hear from Mayor Lee Dong-hang of Goyang City. We will see or listen to his remarks through the video.
안녕하세요. 고양 특례시장 이동환입니다.
Hello, I'm Lee Dong-han, the mayor of Goyang City. I sincerely welcome all GNLC member states and lifelong learning officials attending 2022 UNESCO GNLC International Webinar. I believe everyone agrees that education and learning are the most powerful tools for the sustainable development of our citizens, communities, and cities. The Learning City's role is to spread these values of lifelong learning and settle them into the culture. Education is a common good for which everyone must be jointly responsible. In change with the principle of solidarity and cooperation, according to the Future of Education report published by UNESCO. This is why we are here together. Urban concerns are no longer confined to just one city. We need to work together globally with attention and active cooperation. We hope many discussions will be held today at the webinar, sharing global lifelong learning issues, GNLC strategies, and examples of excellent learning cities. I sincerely appreciate UIL's efforts for GNLC activities and preparation of the webinar, and we would like to express our special thanks to Marrakesh, Wyndham, and Larissa for sharing the best practices. Goyang will continue to support and strive to expand the opportunities for the exchange of learning practices among learning cities around the world and strengthen the cooperative system. Thank you.
For your remarks, Mayor Lee. Next, so in today's webinar, we will have various case studies, and we also have thematic presentations regarding global lifelong learning and GNLC strategies. The UIL will provide presentations, and 3 cities will share with us their GNLC activities. And regarding anything regarding these presentations, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them on the chat room. And after all the presentations are done, we will share your questions and comments during the Q&A session at the end. So firstly, we have Alex Howells and Edith Hammer here with us to give their presentation on the Global Lifelong Learning Agenda. We will share the screen for them.
Okay. Well, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks to the team in Goyang Learning City for organizing this important event. The webinar is not only an opportunity to reflect on local practices, but also to look into recent trends within the global lifelong learning agenda and to explore how global education and learning concepts can be translated at the local level and implemented within this particular context of learning cities. So today in our presentation, my colleague Alex Howells and myself will explore some recent developments in lifelong learning. You can change the slide, please. Including UNESCO's Futures of Education initiative, the United Nations Transforming Education Summit, the 7th International Conference on Adult Education, Confintea 7, which was held in June this year. And we will end the presentation with an insight into the UL Handbook for Lifelong Learning. Next slide, please. Well, on UNESCO's Futures of Education initiative, this is a large consultative process that was started at the end of 2019. And the Futures of Education initiative provided a platform to rethink education and learning in light of the global challenges. And the initiative relied on a broad, open process of co-construction involving youth, educators, governments, civil society representatives, businesses and other stakeholders. So it was a highly integrative process. And there were a variety of outcome documents from different stakeholders. And one of them, for example, produced also by URL, is a report on embracing a culture of lifelong learning, which proposes 10 fields of action to build a culture of lifelong learning at different levels of government. And the main outcome document of the Futures of Education initiative is a report entitled Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education. And this report was published roughly a year ago, and the development was led by an international commission of thought leaders from diverse fields and different regions in the world. And the report presents a forward-looking vision of education and learning, exploring the potential ways in which education and learning could be further developed for the benefits of individuals and society.
개인과 사회의 발전을 위해서 교육이 앞으로 어떻게 더 발전할 수 있을지에 대해서 논의를 하고 있습니다.
And a central claim made by the report is that the right to education must be broadened. So the right to education shall no longer be simply framed around schooling, but should be expanded to rights to lifelong learning, which applies to everyone, everywhere. Importantly, this must include the right to information, the right to connectivity, and the right to culture. And to go a bit further into details, you may go to the next slide. The report also makes an important point on the role of adult education and learning, which needs to be expanded beyond labor market purposes, ensuring a holistic understanding of lifelong learning, which is to serve the development of sustainable societies in all its aspects. And to achieve this, the report makes several proposals for renewing education and learning. The first one is about pedagogies. Pedagogies need to be built on the principles of cooperation, collaboration, solidarity, supporting students to work together and transform the world with empathy and compassion. The second point is about ecological, intercultural and interdisciplinary learning that needs to be stronger emphasized within curricula. Also, teaching must be further professionalized as a collaborative endeavor where teachers are recognized as key figures in education and social transformation. The fourth point is about schools that have a vital role in promoting inclusion, equity, and well-being. They need to be places that bring diverse groups of people together, encouraging collective learning. And the last point, which is probably the most important in terms of lifelong learning, is about that we should ensure and expand the educational opportunities that take place throughout life and in different cultural and social spaces. So at all times of life, people should have meaningful and quality educational opportunities. We should connect natural, built and virtual sites of learning, carefully leveraging the best potentials of each. So this links directly to the demanded right of lifelong learning that I've mentioned before. And while some of these proposed actions lie more in the remits of national governments, it is also on local governments and stakeholders that have important roles to play in transforming education and learning. And this is what we can see at the local level within the context of learning cities. And I'm sure we will hear some good examples of that later on in today's webinar. The second initiative that I would like to present is the Transforming Education Summit. You may change the slide again, please. This United Nations Transforming Education Summit took place this September, and it was preceded by a consultative process. And the summit was convened in response to a global crisis in education. And this crisis is characterized by a lack of equity, quality, and relevance in education, with far-reaching impacts for learners worldwide and for our collective future. And in preparing for the summit, 5 action tracks or priority areas were established. You may change the slide again. And these highlight the policy interventions. And as you can see in the slide, these 5 action tracks actually reflect several of the priorities that are also highlighted in the Futures of Education report. And so these initiatives are really aligned with each other. So we can see the importance of having inclusive schools, again, strengthening the teaching professions, promoting digital learning and transformation, as well as the importance of financing of education. And I will not go into detail for all of them, but I will just elaborate a bit further on action track 2, which is about learning and skills for life, work, and sustainable development. And for our work on lifelong learning, this is the most significant action track. So you may change the slide again. The focus of this action track is to enable people to become resilient and prepared for an uncertain future, providing them with the opportunities to gain the necessary knowledge, skills, and values they need to become change agents for sustainable development. And to achieve this, we need a whole institution approach to learning, which brings together educators, administrators, learners, their families, and also the wider communities to co-create learning opportunities with them. A second important point is that about inclusion, equity, and justice. We need a human rights-based approach to education, in particular with view to gender equality and the needs of vulnerable groups. Building robust and implement robust lifelong learning policies and systems is key. These need to consider the needs of all groups of society, including rural populations, ethnic and migrant communities. Such systems importantly need to include mechanisms for the recognition of prior learning and enhance opportunities for decent work among vulnerable groups. There is also a need to strengthen governance and financing, supporting countries to develop evidence-based sustainable development policies and lifelong learning policies, which is also linked to the need to collect data and to track progress and to build policies upon this data. And I'm sure we will also hear a bit more about that when presenting the handbook. And the last point is to achieve this global transformation, it will be necessary to empower individuals to become agents of change and to equip them with the skills they need for transitioning towards both digital and green economies. This requires the establishment of flexible pathways, flexible learning pathways throughout the life course, facilitating reskilling and upskilling for people of all stages in their lives. And mechanisms and tools such as micro-credentials and learning accounts are important ways to promote flexibility of learning. Well, in our a bit limited time today, this only allows us to touch upon these issues briefly. But all these documents, the outcome documents from the Transforming Education Summit, as well as the different reports that were published within the context of the Futures of Education initiative, they're all available online, and we are happy to share the links also. And I would really invite the participants to further explore them, as they provide very interesting and important impetus for the work of learning cities also. So thank you. I will now give the floor to my colleague Alex, and he will continue with Confintea 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. and thank you to the City of Goyang for hosting this meeting. Welcome to all the representatives of learning cities. I see people from very well-established member cities as well as some of the new ones that joined this year. So a big welcome to all of you. I'll just talk about two developments this year quite briefly. One was a major event taking place in June in Marrakesh, Morocco. This was Confintea 7, the 7th International Conference on Adult Education. And this event only takes place every 12 or 13 years. So, you know, long periods of time in between. And so a major milestone whenever a Confintea takes place. The next one will take us beyond the conclusion of the 2030 agenda. So this was a perfect opportunity to reflect on the role of adult learning and education from a lifelong learning perspective within sustainable development. And the outcome document of Confintea 7 was called the Marrakesh Framework for Action. So next slide, please. The Marrakesh Framework for Action, it was endorsed by 142 UNESCO member states that were in attendance, either physically in Marrakesh or online, and endorsed at the national level, but with major implications for the local level and for cities. So I would invite you all to find the Marrakesh Framework for Action online and to read through. There are many commitments contained in there, very important ones, and references to the local level appear throughout the framework. But I would just like to, in particular, draw your attention to point 24 when you get a chance to read the Framework for Action, because within the context of redesigning systems for adult learning and education, there is an important point specifically on the local level, which I'm sure will resonate in your context. So the next slide, please. So this point I mentioned, point 24, this is in a section on learning systems. So the Marrakesh Framework for Action is divided into 6 main topics for adult learning and education and lifelong learning. So we have governance, funding, inclusion, learning systems, quality, and learning domains. And as I mentioned, you will find references to cities and the local level across all of these topics. And collectively, these topics present a picture of how we can move towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as establishing a new social contract for education. So just going back to that point I mentioned, point 24, as part of the learning systems topic, explicitly recognizes the importance of strengthening adult learning and education at the local level. It talks about co-funding training and learning initiatives within community learning centres, and it talks about some of the really important institutions for lifelong learning at the local level, which will be familiar to all of you: technical and vocational education and training centres, higher education institutions, libraries, museums, workplaces, sport and recreation centres, all of these important spaces found at the local level, which have such a significant role to play in lifelong learning. So I would once again invite you to read the Framework for Action and think about how it can be contextualized in your city as implementation of the framework. Just moving to the next slide, please. Implementation will really rely on multiple levels. As you can see there for point 2, taking the Framework for Action forward, we will need to make use of mechanisms at the global, regional, national, subnational, and of course, local levels. And if we do so, then we can use the transformative potential of adult learning and education for a sustainable future. So that's just a brief insight into Confintea 7, which was a major event of 2022. Now for the final part of our presentation, I'm going to talk about a flagship publication issued by the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning this year. And the name of this publication is Making Lifelong Learning a Reality, a Handbook. So if you search for this online, you will find it very easily. It's freely available, and it's a relatively concise publication, very practical. So it takes you through a number of different stages of conceptualizing and implementing lifelong learning. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a brief insight into the structure of the handbook. Chapter 1, we focus on lifelong learning as a concept and as an integrated policy for sustainable development. Chapter 2 looks more at the key features of effective lifelong learning policies, primarily at the national level, but also touching on the local level. And then chapter 3, which is the most detailed one of the 4, this looks at various aspects of lifelong learning implementation, including through formal and non-formal learning, as well as informal learning, and the development of flexible learning pathways, to name some examples. And chapter 4, which is the most relevant to the audience today, most probably, really hones in on the local level. So chapter 4 is labeled as a teaching case, and we go through the UNESCO Learning City model, and we relate all the guidance from chapters 1 to 3 to the local level with very practical examples, examples from the GNLC, but also a hypothetical case study to show you how you can, in very concrete terms, implement lifelong learning and develop lifelong learning policies at the local level. So I think most of you will find that quite relevant if you are able to find the time to read the handbook, and particularly chapter 4. So next slide, please. And then this is just a brief slide. I think there was another image on that, yes. Just to show you, I mean, you're all familiar with this as members of the network, some of the key features of learning cities, and just to mention that all of these are revisited in the handbook in a very practical way. So I don't think I will continue. I could talk a bit more about the handbook, but I think I've just provided a preview there, and I hope you all find time to take a look. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the last slide. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from all of you later in the discussion. Back to Go-Yang, thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Edith and Alex, for your presentation.
유네스코 교육의 미래 보고서와 그 교육 전환 회의 때 나왔던
So that was a good summary of the UNESCO Future of Education report and the Marrakesh Framework of Action adopted at the CONFINTEA 7. Now they have emphasized that the UIL handbook is provided for free on its website. In fact, all the publications are open online, so I also want to encourage all the audience to take some time to look at those publications. Moving on to the next presentation by Ms. Mary McCauley of UNESCO UIL. Let me start the screen share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you for hosting this webinar. Thank you to the City of Go-Yang and for all the participants who are here with us today. My name is Marie McCauley, and I'm a member of the team for the Learning Cities network at UIL, and I'm happy here to discuss a little bit about some of the achievements we've gone through this year with the network, but also looking forward a little bit into the coming years. So moving on to the next slide, I'll just get started by saying Well, first of all, I assume the network needs no introduction to people here today, but just in case there are some cities who are interested in joining the network or who maybe are new to the network here today, a friendly reminder that the UNESCO Learning Cities, the global network, for Learning Cities was launched in 2013. And it's really a structure, a policy-oriented network that aims to provide some inspiration, know-how, some good practices to enhance and develop overall the practice of lifelong learning in cities. And one of the most important achievements, one that is recurring every year, is the network's ability to bring together learning cities to promote the concept of lifelong learning at the local level and to bring learning city promoters from around the world on a regular basis through these types of events, such as these webinars or in-person meetings to share experiences. And this year, we now count 294 active members as we welcome 77 cities from 44 different countries around the world who joined the network. We'll be looking forward to enhancing our collaboration with those new cities through some of the activities that are listed here. So working on sharing lifelong learning policies and practices, producing and exchanging knowledge on key challenges and solutions, also on capacity building and training initiative, and finally on participating in global events, such as the International Conference on Learning Cities, which is our flagship event. Moving over to the next slide, a little bit more detail as to the cities that we welcomed this year into the network. And I won't read them, but simply I have them here on the screen to give you a bit of a glimpse at the diversity of cities, the diversity of countries that they're from as well, and also the large number of cities that we welcomed this year into the network. So from Asia and the Pacific, we welcomed 13 new learning cities, making actually a total of 99 cities from the Asia region. Moving forward to the next slide, you'll be able to see we welcomed also a large number of cities from Africa and the Arab states, from, again, a really wide range of countries across the region. Finally, another slide looking at Europe and North America, where we actually also welcomed our first city from the country of Canada. Edmonton joined the network this year, along with, as you can see, quite a large number of cities from different countries. And finally, moving over to Latin America and the Caribbean, some new cities from countries that had established cities already and that are now also working in partnership with those new and established learning cities, something that we're really looking forward to doing more of as part of the network, as some of the activities so far have been focused very much at the local regional level, so cities helping each other on different initiatives. Moving to the next slide, I'll just share a little bit about the GNLC strategy. I'll just actually, before I get into the GNLC strategy, I just want to remind everybody that this year we hosted the World Cities Day event back in October, where we welcomed all of the new learning cities, and we actually hosted a full day long event where we greeted all the different learning cities from each region that I've just gone through, where we were able to present to the network. First of all, we were able to present the new cities to the established cities that are already part of the network, get them to kind of realize the scope of the work taking place from some of these active learning cities. We also went through with the new learning cities the different elements of the strategy of the network, which I'm going to go into now. And we were just overall very, very excited to be able to host such an event on a whole throughout the whole day with all the different regions. So on the topic of the GNLC strategy, which was the main focus of the work of the World Cities Day event, we went through with the new cities as well as the current established cities, the different main points that the UNESCO GNLC is really looking to strengthen for the next period, but also has been working on strengthening for the past year very much so. And that has included redefining the thematic clusters. Reason behind that is really to increase the relevance of the work of the cluster to align with overall international strategy on specific themes. And those clusters, I'll get into the detail a little bit as to what they are, but just to say briefly, we're working on the topic of global citizenship education, education for sustainable development, health and well-being, planning, and finally inclusion, which also includes literacy and ICTs. Part of the strategy also involves bringing technical partners to support the clusters. This is something that the GNLC has already done before, but the new strategy looks at identifying very specific technical clusters that can best support the work of the coordinating leading learning cities inside each cluster, but also overall the work of the cluster around the specific theme. So we're looking to bring on board with us experts that can do the best job possible in supporting both on a conceptual, theoretical, as well as more practical level, those particular themes of the clusters I've just mentioned. Empowering cities by taking leadership of the thematic clusters and its activities is something that we're implementing now as part of the work of the clusters, giving coordinating cities a bigger role in facilitating some of the activities, but also in simply promoting efforts around the specific topics that they're concerned with. Providing support to learning cities in Africa to develop and implement local lifelong learning. As you saw, we welcome a large number of new cities from the Africa region this year, as well as the Arab region, but looking specifically supporting learning cities in Africa. This goes two ways, really, very much bringing some of the elements of lifelong learning policy development at the local level from around the world as an experience, but also sharing back, taking what Africa has been doing also in terms of developing local spaces and territories for learning, and how can that actually impact the lifelong learning policy development for cities outside of that region. And finally, developing a database for peer learning. And I will get into that a little bit later in more detail, actually, as we look towards the future of the GNLC for next year. GNLC clusters, moving to the next slide. So, like I said, 5 clusters for the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities, which again are designed to serve member cities by enabling them to work more closely with one another, with perhaps similar challenges, concerns, initiatives, ideas that they may have. So the learning cities from the GNLC are welcome to join either any cluster that they wish to do so. We recommend 1 or 2. And just to look back at 2022, where efforts were focused mainly on the lifelong learning for health cluster, so health and well-being. And next year, a bit more attention will be dedicated to the education for sustainable development cluster, as well as citizenship, as those clusters might be working a bit more transversally in the year to come. Moving to the next slide, and this will also take us to a little bit before, not over 2022, but a little bit before as well, October 2021, where over 2,000 participants attended the 5th International Conference on Learning Cities in Yeongsu in the Republic of Korea. And just to outline some of the main outcomes for the conference was actually the Yeongsu Declaration of Learning Cities, which through 20 action points affirmed the commitment of lifelong learning for health. And so learning cities around the world adopted very specific concrete plan for the development and implementation of lifelong learning policies, but really raising awareness and inspiring action for healthy living within cities. And as part of that, the Yeongsu Declaration was adopted, but so was the creation of an enactment guide for the Yeongsu Declaration. And so the Yeongsu Declaration states that the commitment of participating cities will promote programs for health education and health literacy for all ages, as well as build healthy and resilient cities through lifelong learning. And so as part of this, UNESCO, along with the UNESCO Global Health and Education Chair, are collaborating to develop this enactment guide for the Yeongsu Declaration. And the process was shaped this year through a 3-part webinar series that investigated the stages of raising awareness for lifelong learning, but also developing a policy towards healthy and resilient cities. And that takes me to the next slide, and looking more specifically at this enactment guide of the Yeongsu Declaration as a key outcome of 2022 for the network. So like I said, 20 points, actually a bit more than 20 points were affirmed as a commitment in this declaration to lifelong learning for health. And so as cities endorse this plan for developing and implementing lifelong learning policies, we then decided, with the help of the UNESCO Chair for Global Health Education, to support cities in developing an enactment guide to actually create specific steps in understanding what it means to developing and implementing lifelong learning policies for health. So a little bit more details as to what took place during this 3-part series webinar. The first webinar really laid the foundation for lifelong learning for health policy development. It focused on conceptualizing the notion of lifelong learning for health, also focused on raising awareness of the role of cities, and it discussed establishing intersectoral task force, so involving a range of stakeholders in education, health, and other sectors to support and oversee those particular strategies for lifelong learning for health. The second webinar addressed the process of conducting lifelong learning for health inventory within a city. I also discussed developing an action plan for comprehensive health learning pathway for all that integrates the activities of all stakeholders across formal, non-formal, as well as informal settings. And finally, the third webinar discussed the lifelong learning policy implementation strategies. And this was really to ensure sustainability of the lifelong learning for health policy in order to best monitor, evaluate, and develop those mechanisms that can enhance policy visibility and sustainability. And moving over to the next slide, and this is to conclude on that particular element of the work that took place this year. The UNESCO Chair and UIL with the GNLC are gathering feedback from the learning cities on the enactment guide. Cities were invited to provide very detailed feedback, as well as share some case studies on what it looks like at the local level to develop lifelong learning for health policy. So looking to integrate the case studies into the enactment guide so that a final version can be launched next year. And this topic continues to be highly relevant, and more activities are going to be organized in order to operationalize this particular guide next year. So please stay tuned, and you'll be made aware of the different activities around this topic. And finally, I think I will conclude on the last 2 slides, looking a little bit forward now. So quite a few elements that the GNLC will be focusing on for the next few years, starting with helping cities to build resilience to environmental change and challenges also. So, you know, in the GNLC, at UIL, and overall at UNESCO, we understand the importance of local and regional governments to adopt the necessary measures to prepare territories, cities, spaces to become resilient to environmental change. And we know that cities have a large amount of resources. They're really well equipped to tackle climate change and also have the capacity sometimes to do so quickly. And we also know that their impact can reach beyond the cities themselves and the urban communities. And so for us, we'll be looking at developing the knowledge and skills needed for this green transition, but also doing so understanding how learning cities can shape that particular change at the local level and beyond. So we'll be further enhancing the engagement of cities and other partners on the local, national level to guide some of the members of the GNLC in tackling this particular challenge. Another key area for future work will be for the GNLC to further document how learning cities are able to build learning ecosystems where the community becomes a learning institution, connecting a range of partners such as libraries, museums, communities, community radio, public access television, spaces for digital commons, and more, as well as bringing in formal education and training institutions into this building inclusive learning ecosystems. The GNLC and UIL will also look to strengthen and seek partnerships within cities involving universities, because as we know, in many learning cities around the world, universities really embed the Learning City Initiative. In fact, in some learning cities, some of our members, thanks to in part to the initiative of the university to actually start the process of becoming a learning city. So we see universities as being a main contributor to establishing these citywide learning partnerships, and so we'll be looking to involve them further into our work. We'll enlarge the scope of Learning Cities agenda to include also research, advocacy, international exchange, capacity building, development, technical advice, something I also mentioned earlier, having additional regional, local level meetings and really encouraging cities to gather in events that can take place at the local regional level or at the country level as well as time. Finally, we'll be looking to offer capacity building efforts that are made and suit the needs of our members, and that can be adaptable to differing local contexts. And we'll be using for this particular element the UIL Learning Hub, which will offer peer learning through courses, modules, or other types of opportunities. And that takes me to my last slide about the UIL Learning Hub. So the UIL Learning Hub is a one-stop online multimedia portal for policy advice, capacity development, knowledge sharing on lifelong learning. It gives access to anyone who is registered to online training courses, workshops, webinars, e-conferences, and it's also a space where you can find tools and guidelines that have been uploaded there. And the Hub's training resources cover the full range of issues that UIL has expertise on. This can range from planning for lifelong learning and education to development of gender-responsive literacy strategies and policies, but also improving monitoring and evaluation. And it features resources on building learning cities, also on managing community learning centers, and on strengthening libraries for lifelong learning. And within this Learning Hub, next year will be the GNLC Community of Practices. And that will be an online space for interaction between GNLC members and will be, like I said, just integrated into the Learning Hub. And the tool will create a space for online discussions between GNLC members, such as a forum or other types of discussion. We'll also be offering GNLC members an opportunity to showcase city-led initiatives within the community of practice so that they can raise awareness of the types of initiatives that they are conducting. And we'll also offer cities a platform to upload and share specific information directly in documents. Finally, it's really going to be providing a source of inspiration for cities who are looking to find out about similar challenges, initiatives, opportunities that other cities might be faced with that they might want to learn from their peers on. And that really is the conclusion of a little bit of a retrospective on the GNLC, but also looking a little bit forward into the future with these different elements of the work being expanded upon, being embedded into new technologies, and really everything will be a bit more streamlined on our platform for the years to come so that information is more accessible to all new and established current learning cities. I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to listening from our fellow learning cities today who are going to be presenting, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie, for your presentation. So you told us about the different activities and outcomes of GNLC and its future plans. You've also told us about the guidelines of the learning cities. And you also told us about the Learning Hub, which I am particularly interested in. The various lifelong learning platforms that we are using right now, there are many different platforms, but once this platform, this hub, is provided to us next year, I think everyone will be online using the platform. Next, we will take a look at the cases of different cities, different learning cities. Firstly, we have from Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is a new learning city that was approved as a member of the UNESCO GNLC, and it held the 7th International Conference on Adult Education. The presentation will be given by Professor Fatima Zora Iflahen. I will share the screen for you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning to you all. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes. Okay, good morning. I hope you're all doing well. Very welcome from a very Warm welcome from Marrakesh, although it's not warm today. It's a little bit cold and rainy. I'd like to present our project, the Learning City project for Marrakesh as a new learning city. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'd like to first introduce myself. I'm Professor Fatim Zraif Lahan, and I'm very happy to be presenting this project on behalf of my colleagues and partners of the civil society, of the Ministry of Education, of the Agency for Lifelong Learning and Fighting Against Illiteracy, and also from the City Council of Marrakesh. We are all partners towards creating a value-added, an added value for our city through this wonderful project with UNESCO. So our assets as Marrakesh, for Marrakesh as a learning city are the following. Very briefly, we are a young and active, talented population in Marrakesh. There is an ecosystem that already exists for cultural, scientific, vocational, leisurely landmarks. We are a world-ranked tourism destination. Marrakesh is ranked first among African, Arab, and many world destinations for tourism. We have been for a long time, Marrakesh is a crossroad of different cultural forms and artistic expressions. Many artists settle in Marrakesh today. We have and not only today, the Majorelle, Yves Saint Laurent, and many others were in writers, and others were in Marrakesh. Artists were in Marrakesh along its history. This is also a city of 1,000 years with a remarkable world, tangible and intangible heritage, and the famous Mafna Square, which is also part of the UNESCO intangible heritage, is also a strong asset. Another very important asset, I gather, is the organization of the Confintea Framework for Action in Marrakesh, the 7th International Conference on Adult Education. Next slide, please. As I said, the project promoters for this wonderful project are many, and we are happy to be using a partnership approach. We started through identifying the key partners, which come from civil society, as I said, organizations having a great practice and experience in lifelong learning. We have the City Council, which is committed to pursue and identify and also raise Marrakesh as a learning city, the local authorities, the Wilaya, that's the Prefecture de Marrakesh, the Regional Academy for Education and Training. This is the Ministry of Education of Primary, middle and higher education. But as a university, we are also Qadi Iyad University, the university of the region, covering the 4 cities of the region with 15 schools and faculties. The NLCA, the National Anti-Illiteracy Agency, are all part promoters of this project. We are lucky to be promoted by the National Commission for Education, Sciences and Culture. We have the UNESCO Office for the Maghreb that has already, of course, claimed and commended us in this project. There is the UIL, GNLC, etc. So all these are partners with us. Now, I have presented the assets, but I also have to present the concerns. Next slide, please. Our concerns mainly lie in basic learning deficiencies with a high illiteracy rate, about 19%, and a significant number of needs. The non-employed, not in employment, not in education, and not in training. We also have a problem with non-inclusive schools, precisely for people with disabilities. Our region, because Marrakesh is part of the Marrakesh-Safi region, in which we have many rural communes, and our areas are mostly, the majority of our communes are rural, mountainous, and of course, inclusive education, specifically for girls in in the rural areas and for people with disabilities everywhere is a concern. We also have another key concern, which is the doubts and deficiencies of the quality education in public schools, as of course many survey results have presented, like Thames Pearls, etc. We also are weakened with a poor public policy and learning space convergence. The articulation and coordination between the public policy and the learning areas, spaces that schools, universities, etc., is a little bit weak. Next slide, please. But of course, there are key interests that we have been able to identify, starting from our assets, our concerns, our weaknesses, and we try to identify 3 key interest axes that we could work on. Those would be equality and inclusion, dignified work and entrepreneurship, especially for youth and women, and health and sustainability. In equality and inclusion, we would like to go towards equal opportunity and affirmative action for vulnerable individuals and groups. I would like to education support and capacity building for women in difficult circumstances, and especially in the suburban areas of Marrakesh. We would like to develop some sort of care for the elderly in terms of equality of opportunity and inclusion, but also for adult education. We would like an inclusive and quality education for all, and in this respect, we have already had started some experiences that are being carried on. That were carried on before we joined this project, and would like also to reduce the digital divide and use ICT and have ICT access for all. In terms of health and sustainability, there is today a reinforced infrastructure after the COVID. There is a hope to generalize quality public health services through the funded healthcare system for vulnerable situations, for vulnerable groups in difficult situations. That is now a national strategy, which will most certainly help. There is we also have decisive environmental and urban sanitation policies to take, and we will have to work on raising awareness actions. As far as youth and women, these groups are concerned, we have to work on the youth and women's employment ratios to augment them, to significantly augment them. The graduate employment rates, which could be also a point of interest in our work, a dignified and decent work for all, the structuring of the informal labor market, and also professional inclusion for women in vulnerable situations. Because when you articulate this with the rural areas, which is a reality in our region, with the dropping out of school, the important rate of girl dropout of school, and then with employment, you see that there are, of course, niches that need to be worked on all the value chain in all the ecosystem. And of course, the establishing of and enhancing of culture through an Academy of Arts. Next slide, please. Okay, what are the objectives for us in joining this project, this great project of Marrakesh as a learning city? Key objectives would be summed up in a few, 5 or 6 objectives. To provide inclusive education programs for all, that start from basic learning for young learners to basic learning to adult learners. Especially illiterate people with persons with disabilities, needs, vulnerable groups, especially in suburban areas, with a view to declare Marrakesh an illiteracy-free city by 2028. We have already started enhancing and putting into practice an initiative that we call the one-to-one initiative in collaboration with the university and the civil society, through which student groups engage in the implementation of literacy programs with young adults and also with their families, with their immediate environment in their district and where they live, and then of course in the professional areas, and then into the community. We also would like to promote the quality of learning, especially in the early stages of public school, through eliminating school dropout and failure by 2018. We would like also to foster the love of reading among children by organizing reading fairs and other. And in this respect, I'd like to mention a project that we have started in the civil society. I'm honored to be part of this project, not as a university member, but also as a civil activist. And this is a collaboration between the university again, the civil society, and other stakeholders. The project is called Kitabi, My Book, and we provide public schools, primary public schools, and middle schools, but also schools and also higher schools of education with books in a cycle of where we lend books to these schools and then get them back and organize reading fairs and reading competitions, etc. Another objective is the institutionalization of lifelong learning, because if it is not institutionalized, it will not work. Institutionalization in public and private action plans across sectors through a multidisciplinary, multi-sectorial approach that grounds lifelong learning into our practices, our policies, and our actions. And also we have the objective of starting a lifelong learning festival every 2 years. We would like also to generalize and valorize best practices through permanent development of work mechanisms. Next slide, please. This is our scheme for doing that. We have a coordination committee that is made of a steering committee, I would call that is made of a certain number of key stakeholders. I've mentioned a few. I don't know why my slide is not visible. Theoretically, it should be 5. So there is a steering committee. There is also partnership and cooperation agreements between various stakeholders that I already mentioned. No, not yet. There is a participatory action plan that reflects the commitments of Marrakesh as a member of the global network of learning cities, bilateral and multilateral partnership agreements for action plan implementation, where the university is a key stakeholder, but also the city council, the Academy for Education, and also our ANALCA, our agency for anti-illiteracy agency, and our other stakeholders. And there's also relevant communication and media strategy to achieve the objectives of the Marrakesh Learning City project. And most of all, I would like to emphasize the monitoring and evaluation process that we are designing right now and that we'd like to implement from the beginning of the project, so that we make sure that there is monitoring, evaluation, re-evaluation, and implementation. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for and good luck to all of us, all of you, and all of us around this table today for this really structural project for our cities, but also for our nations and our peoples. Thank you very much.
감사합니다. 파티마 여와.
Thank you very much, Professor Iplahan. So the city of Marrakesh is pursuing various programs to provide education for all with various specific solutions. Personally, I was deeply impressed by the success of Morocco, where Marrakesh belongs to, in the Qatar World Cup, which is being broadcast in the very early morning in Korea. And I believe Marrakesh and other parts of Morocco can develop further in terms of lifelong learning as well. So thank you again for your presentation. We're moving on to the second case presentation. It's a case of the city of Wyndham, Australia, and awardee of 2021 UNESCO Learning City Award. We have Ms. Sharon Whitcroft. For your information, there are a lot of questions and comments in the chat box, which will be introduced after listening to all presentations. In addition, the relevant UNESCO publications are introduced in the chat box with a hyperlink. Please refer to those publications as well. Now I'm going to start the screen share for Wyndham City.
Thank you. Ann Young Sayo. I am the Learning Community Officer at Wyndham City Council in Victoria, Australia. I work with Diane Tabar, the Coordinator of Learning Community, to oversee the development and implementation of Wyndham's Learning Community Strategy. Firstly, I wish to acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners on the lands on which Wyndham is being built. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today and share Wyndham's experience since receiving the 2021 Learning City Award and our projects around education in Wyndham. I've enjoyed hearing from all the other presenters so far, and I'd like to thank UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning and Goyang City for hosting this excellent event. Next slide, please. So some context. Wyndham is located in the southeastern Australia in the state of Victoria. Our boundaries cover areas of urban, rural and coastal development. Population is over 292,000. We are one of the largest and fastest growing municipalities in our state and our country. Around 100 babies are born every week. And almost half of all Wyndham residents were born overseas and from over 162 different countries. The City of Wyndham continues to undergo rapid change and growth in its demographic and character due to the high and increasing birth rate and a large influx of new residents. With significant cultural diversity, including the largest population of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples in the Greater Melbourne area, the richness of culture is woven throughout the entire community. Next slide, please. So our community is very young, with our two largest age groups being 0 to 4 years and 30 to 34 years old. Our growing migrant populations have brought higher levels of education with them. For example, in the western part of Wyndham, 20% of residents hold a bachelor's degree and more than 10% have a master's or PhD. We have almost 60 private and public schools in Wyndham, which Council collaborates closely with. As a council, we take the challenge of improving education opportunities for our community very seriously, and we're working very hard in this space. Next slide, please. So Wyndham is a proud member of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities. In 2019, Wyndham City was awarded and accepted as a member of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities. And in 2021, we were awarded the award for our work, highlighting our strong partnership model that emphasises that we cannot achieve our actions in isolation. So this award shows the resilience and determination of the Wyndham Learning City and community to achieve and reach its goals of lifelong learning. Also in 2021, Wyndham's working lifelong learning was recognised by the Alliance for Asia Pacific Learning Cities, a coalition of cities with policies and plans for the growth of global learning cities under the motto of promoting lifelong learning in the region. Wyndham was the first Australian city to be inducted into the APL's Hall of Fame, and it's something we are still very proud of. Next slide, please. So our work as a member of the UNESCO Network of Learning Cities is driven by our learning community strategy. That's a current one of 2018 to 2023, with over 50 community partners delivering on the 18 actions. So as I said, the strategy includes 18 actions, which are organised according to the 4 themes as seen on the screen there: celebrating, advocating, facilitating partnerships and collaboration, and innovative learning. My focus today is on the future for education in Wyndham, and I'll be giving you an overview. Next slide, please. So as part of its important advocacy work to support learning and education in Wyndham, Wyndham City Council called on the state government to urgently fund construction of 6 new schools as part of their 22-23 state budget funding to meet demand in the Wyndham's fastest growing suburbs. So our schools are under increasing pressure to accommodate a growing number of students. And the Schools for Wyndham campaign has been advocating for schools to be built in these areas that are most needed since 2017. So Wyndham has the highest number of students per government school in the whole of Victoria. That is, there are nearly 1,000 students on average per government school in Wyndham, compared to a Greater Melbourne average of about half of that. So the campaign activities, the Schools for Wyndham campaign during the 2021-2022 brought wider attention to the issues of the shortage of schools in Wyndham. So that included the state government budget committing to the building of 6 new schools, and then recently re-elected Andrews government having committed funding for planning for 4 new schools and an upgraded school. So we're getting there. Next slide, please. Wyndham's Learning Festival, it's Wyndham's signature learning event. So the festival is the largest annual learning event focusing on promoting and celebrating learning across the lifespan. So now it's in its 7th year, and the Wyndham Learning Festival is led by Wyndham Community and Education Centre, our largest learning centre in Wyndham, with support from Wyndham City Council. So this year we had a theme of building a resilient, sustainable Wyndham, and this free festival offered something for all ages and interests in the first week of September, and celebrated and encouraged lifelong learning with over 70 activities. One of the highlights was an online sustainable event with social change advocate Lynn Doe, who led the event connecting local stories of climate and environmental issues around the world and down into a local level. Next slide, please. The Learning Community team delivered the 2022 Wyndham Education Roundtable. So the attendee list for this event included over 35 dynamic education and learning providers across Wyndham, with the goal of updating each other on outcomes from last year's roundtable and the resetting collaborative plans for the coming year. So these educators and community leaders exchanged ideas about their vision for the future of learning in the municipality, the context of our wider education and learning strategy focused on supporting the community to be lifetime learners. Similarly, the Wyndham's Principals Network Breakfast reaffirms Council's commitment to support and develop collaborative partnerships with Wyndham principals and all our local schools. So the intention of this network breakfast was to strengthen our partnerships through our willingness to listen and collaborate and work together to promote learning and education in Wyndham. Next slide, please. And so the Wyndham Community Education Centre's Transformative Education Showcase was held in November as part of the 2022 Global Learning Festival and featured a panel of young people who are advancing education and leaders in their local communities. Each of these organisations provides innovative services to school communities. The panellists included robotic programs and promotions of STEM engagement in schools, Aboriginal dance and wellbeing performing arts programs, so connecting in-school and out-of-school activities, a social enterprise supporting young people with tutoring support, career development and mentoring, and a trainings program for young people. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, due to Wyndham's rich Aboriginal history, the region was home to the tribes of the Kulin Nation. We are particularly committed to improving the educational outcomes and wellbeing of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So we do this by sharing resources and links with education networks to support commitments to embedding Aboriginal perspectives across all aspects of learning, so including a rich array of materials and opportunities for online professional development. We do this in a number of ways through National Reconciliation Week, where a number of events were organised across Wyndham, both community-facing and events for staff. Another example is young people were invited to a healing event at our Aboriginal Community Centre, the Wanggal Durrung Centre. And also as part of the Global Learning Festival again, in 2022, our keynote speaker, Marley Silva, delivered an online webinar, WinTalk, Acknowledge, Respect and Value Aboriginal Culture and Identity, Pathway to Reconciliation. So Marley shared her ideas on how we can all be better allies to Aboriginal people. She implored us to, in this conversation, to pause, reflect and make a commitment to learning, growing and being change makers and a better future for us all. Next slide, please. Wyndham's Learning Community Unit, along with a representative from Wollongong City Council's Learning Unit, co-presented a paper entitled Libraries and Learning Cities, exploring varying roles of engagement across the globe at the 16th conference in Tampere, Finland earlier this year. So this presentation included an exploration of the varying roles that libraries play in learning regions, cities, communities and towns, and showcase the ways in which public libraries met the learning needs of residents during the COVID-19 pandemic, and which are now future-proofing them for future crises throughout lifelong learning. Next slide, please. So Wyndham City Libraries provides a wide range of program services for children and young people, and also adults, responding to the identified needs of the community. In particular, the Children's and Youth Strategic Framework provides direction to Wyndham City Library Service for the provision of these library programs and services to children and youth in particular, in line with our library services action plans and our library services strategies. This framework explores the strengths and weaknesses of current library service provision, identifies future trends and stakeholders, and also makes recommendations for actions across the library service. And we also recognise that young people need different approaches at different stages in their development and target services. So for children and young people, also adults, the library offers a place to learn, a place to connect, and a place to be. We offer free specialist education services through our youth library team. And the library has a range of resources to support teachers and parents with the academic, social, and emotional learning of primary school age children, and also children with additional needs. So our programs are essentially designed to encourage a love of literacy and learning to help young people engage with the community. One of the examples is a new program called Sharing Stories, Help Your Child to Learn from Birth. It's a new project which aims to support early literacy and oral language development for vulnerable families in Wyndham, particularly with the children of the cohort 0 to 5. So we found that this was developed in response to data indicating that Wyndham has the largest number of children developmentally at risk in Metro Melbourne, and emerging research the detrimental impact of COVID-19 restrictions on the development of children in this age group for school readiness and limited access to early years service. So we're looking forward to rolling that program out next year. Next slide, please. So our leading educational facilities include the Wyndham Tech School, which was established over 4 years ago and only one of 10 in the state, pardon. This school complements and extends the curriculum across access to technology of Wyndham's secondary schools. So the Wyndham Tech School supports students to think creatively, to work together, to solve real-world problems posed by local industry, and help prepare them for future by delivering the advanced education and STEM skills they need to compete in the future job market. The Wyndham Tech School is hosted by Victoria University and is providing access to advanced technology, industry programs, and exposure to career pathways that secondary students may not otherwise have access to. Also, Spark has been established as a collaborative space to support and mentor digital tech startups and entrepreneurs to scale up their concepts and products to commercialisation. So Spark is an integral part of Wyndham City's smart city strategy. It focuses on developing an innovative and entrepreneurial ecosystem. The aim of Spark is to create a vibrant hub where member businesses are embedded in an inclusive, collaborative environment that fosters active participation, initiatives which enable accelerated growth and learning. Next slide, please. So finally, I would like to acknowledge my colleague Diane Tabar for her contribution to this presentation. I certainly wish I had more time to share some of the other amazing initiatives that Wyndham is spearheading in this learning and education space, but I know my time is limited. My details are there, so please feel free to connect with me. And I thank you for listening. Back to Goyang.
Thank you very much. We learned about the different strategies of Wyndham City and the different experiences. We have our last presenter for today. So in 2017, this city was awarded the UNESCO Learning City Award. We have Greece's Larissa. We have you may present.
Hello. Hello, I'm really glad to be with you. I'd like to thank the city of Goyang for the opportunity to present my city's effort. Larissa Larissa's efforts to promote lifelong learning in local community. My name is Niki Chiungu, and I'm a member of the Larissa Learning City working team. Let me share with you my screen. Okay, let me say a few things about my city, about Larissa. Larissa is a big city in the center of Greece. It's the capital of Thessaly province and an important hub for trade, transports, and communications. The main goal of Larissa Learning City is to promote a lifelong learning in the city, and the vision was and still is to make active learning a daily lifestyle for every citizen. The city of Larissa joined the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities in 2016. It was the first Greek city member of the network that paved the way for other Greek cities to join. In October 2017, Larissa was awarded with by UNESCO for its efforts. And in 2018, the Citizens University was founded, an innovative non-formal education structure that already has 2 European awards, has been awarded with the Grundtvig Award in 2020, and in 2021 was elected as one of the 10 best educational initiatives by the Innovation in Politics Institute. I would like to mention a few more details regarding the steps we made to build Larissa Learning City. In 2015, Larissa participated in the second International Conference on Learning Cities in Mexico, and also organized a seminar and a conference with professors Peter Jarvis, Ted Fleming, and Peter Mayo, great experts in the field of adult education. In 2016, since understanding the philosophy of Learning City was a key point for us, we cooperated with the Hellenic Association of Adult Education, a very important association in Greece, and also an informal working group was established in the municipality to organize and promote the Learning City vision. Meanwhile, the municipality took part in various conferences and meetings with institutions and stakeholders. In 2017, we continued to work together with the city stakeholders, share with them our vision of building a learning city. Well, this year, in 2017, the Larissa Learning City Committee was established under the auspices of the City Council. Until 2022, meetings and workshops with the city stakeholders were organized, strengthening the network and designing together the annual action plan. And here are photos from the stakeholders meeting in November 2019. And here you can see photos from the meetings in June and October 2022, where more than 100 representatives of city stakeholders participated and worked together to design the action plan for 2023. During the last year, successful projects have been organized that promote lifelong learning in local community, as well as conferences and workshops with a significant number of participants. Larissa managed to interact and cooperate with the city bodies and to implement successful joint programs such as the Summer Hub in the city and the traffic education program. Also, training programs for the staff of the municipality were and still are organized, and also a very successful program for the elderly about the digital literacy. The outbreak of the pandemic in early 2020, of course, affected the successful route of Larissa Learning City and Citizens University. Factions adapted to the new data. Many programs had been postponed. New online actions were organized. For the first time in the city, a whole series of online discussions were held on the effects of the pandemic in everyday areas. So during the pandemic, online discussions were organized, online programs to support the elderly were organized, such as fitness programs, learning Latin dances, theatrical education. Also, parenting groups were organized online for city families. A learning cycle for about 200 educators for distance learning and critical thinking were also organized with great success. And an online training program for health was developed in 5 thematic cycles, such as media and information, climate change and health, and pain management. And these are photos from several events that were organized during the pandemic regarding health, culture, and sports. Online parity groups, as I said, were organized during the pandemic, and also in-person parent groups for refugees that live in our city. Organized, as I mentioned, Larissa organized a learning cycle for hundreds of teachers in the city. It was the first learning cycle, I believe, in the country that was organized for teachers about distance learning and development of critical thinking. During the pandemic, the city turned to sustainable mobility policies with new bike lanes and new pedestrian streets. However, this came into conflict with traditional beliefs and attitudes supporting the use of cars. So the Citizens University organized traffic educational programs supported and supervised by kindergartners and school personnel in order to promote a more environmentally friendly attitude among young citizens. The program I Ride a Bike with My Child aimed at parents and their children, and the program Traffic Education for Children aimed at small groups of children from 6 to 12 years old. During these last years, the municipality established important institutions that promote inclusion and active participation, and also strengthen the city's effort to cultivate a learning philosophy. These are the Municipal Youth Council, the Committee for Gender Equality, and the Immigrant and Refugee Integration Council, all institutions that make great work organizing each year open events, workshops, and joint actions with stakeholders and other institutions. In 2019, Larissa was designated by UNESCO as the coordinating city of the thematic cluster Citizenship Education, together with the city of Yeonsu-gu from the Republic of Korea for the years 2020 and 2021. In these 2 years, a fruitful dialogue was developed between the 58 member cities of the group. Despite the restrictions imposed by the pandemic, online meetings, workshops, and an international conference were organized that gave cities the opportunity to strengthen their networking and exchange good practices. Also, a publication was prepared and published in 2021, which aims to make readers aware of the importance of citizenship education in local communities within the framework of lifelong learning. Challenges. Larissa now faces the challenges of making good use of the experience gained so far, strengthening the local network, and effectively conveying the importance of adapting a lifelong learning philosophy at local and national level. It is highly important to continuously promote the lifelong learning philosophy. It's very important to keep strengthening the networking, to keep the stakeholders involved and interested. It's also very important to encourage participation, inclusion, and co-shaping decisions and future steps. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. So I thought there were 2 presenters today, but I guess just one person is presenting. So we heard about how Larissa was developed and the Civil University. It has a very long history. I've heard about the case study of Larissa multiple times before, and it was very inspiring to hear from Larissa City here. Now, that is it for all the presentations that we have prepared today. Today, we will have a Q&A and discussion session among all the participants gathered here today. We have about 15 minutes left. If you use the raise hand function in Zoom, you may speak or make a comment. If you have any questions or comments regarding the presentations, if you have any comments or questions towards the presenters, then you may leave them on the chat room or raise your hand using the function in Zoom. Do you have anything to say, Ms. Chung? Please unmute yourself. Hello. I'm from Korea's Gwangmyeong City. My name is Chung Hae-kyung. So earlier, you talked about the local youth council. What was the participation rate like? What were the outcomes and results like? From the MYC, what was the participation rate like? Are there any other questions on the floor? Can Professor Kleoniki answer regarding this question?
I would kindly ask to repeat the question. It was not very clear. No. Could you please?
Okay, so there was the municipal youth council in Larissa. So I think that it must have been difficult for you to establish the municipal youth council. So how was that process, and how many are the members of the council, and what are the achievements?
Yes, thank you for the question. The Municipal Youth Council was established. We think that it is very important to give youth people a strong voice, to express their opinions, to listen to their needs, to share their thoughts, and work together to promote a new attitude regarding active participation of young people in our city. So we worked with them, we talked with them, we shared our vision for a learning city and active participation. We gradually, a small group of young people was developed, and time by time, this group was even bigger as more and more young people participated in the effort. We work together with the young people. We always support them. In the annual action plan, we always have their proposals about new actions in the city. During the last 2 years, they made successful projects. They organized a very successful youth festival and learning festival. The municipality support economically and in any other way their plans. It's not always very easy to persuade young people to participate in these actions, because young people are a bit disappointed about the participating in community issues. I think that it's important to build a strong relation, a strong and real relation with them in order to achieve successful projects. Yes, it's important to mention also that the Youth Council is under the auspices of the City Council, which from the beginning embraced their effort.
Thank you, madam, for your neat presentation. And you have set out for the community participation is more vital, because you have taken the youth population. It is very difficult. More challenges are there, but still you have overcome those challenges and made the program an effective one. Hearty congratulations to you, madam.
Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 또 다른 질문.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Do you have any question, comment, or proposal?
중간에 화면이 들어와서 그러는데 혹시
So it seems
라리사 부의장님 지금은 직함이 어떻게 되시는지 모르겠는데.
Dimitris from Larissa, do you want to say a few words of greetings? Dimitris from Larissa. I wonder which position you now hold.
Good morning from Larissa. Yes, my colleague told you a lot about our efforts as Larissa Learning City. And I think that our basic aim for the future is how we can communicate with young people, how we can have a better collaboration with them, because it is not so easy. And I think that this is the basic problem for all municipalities and all the mayors, how you can collaborate with them and how you have some efforts with them. So a city council like this can support our efforts. It is very basic that they have now an identity like citizens of our Larissa, and they can have their idea about the future, and we have to support them. And it is very basic to hear them, to hear their voice. And I think that the same idea is from the mayor of Goyang. All the mayors all over the world understand this, and they want to give a voice to their youth.
아까 손을 들어주셨던 주르겐 포켈 마이크를 켜시고 말씀을 해주시면 됩니다.
Next, we can have Jürgen Forkel. You may unmute yourself and make your speech. Jürgen Forkel, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I was just wondering about a strategic approach of the cities. I mean, the cities are all very different from each other, and I know that there are many efforts being made, but I wonder if there's a written document from the city, how they want to have a strategic approach, a systematic approach, how they want to enhance the lifelong learning and the sustainability in their cities. So the question is, do those cities who did these wonderful presentations today could provide us with a document of their, let's say, in parliament about they want to improve the lifelong learning in their city? Is there something written and decided by the parliament that they could share with us? Thank you.
Is there any city that can answer this question? And also at UIL, there are different platforms that share the cases of different cities. So there's a document bank from UIL. UIL may introduce about that.
If I may share a few thoughts about your question, Jürgen. Thank you for your question. As mentioned in Larissa, we work very hard to cooperate with city stakeholders. And during the last meeting of city stakeholders, a document was prepared. It was the annual action plan for 2023. Which is designed together with the city stakeholders and describes educational programs and joint actions that will be organized, that would be developed during 2023, which is very important for us because you may understand that it needs great work to persuade the stakeholders to participate in co-shaping annual action plan. So we have a strategic plan, which is a document that we share with all city stakeholders and work together to make it a reality. Beyond this, we try to have a very good track of all the programs that we develop in the city. And we have all programs evaluated by the participants and the educators, and we have evaluation reports at the end of each program. And during the last year, for the first time, we work with focus groups as evaluation practice, which is a very useful tool to evaluate, to see how programs are developed and what improvements we may take. We really believe that tracking and evaluation of the programs is very much important. During the last year, during the last 2 years, we worked very hard to have evaluation forms for each program we develop. And also we have a very good track on every participant's needs and educators that participate in our programs. In Larissa, very much important is the co-projects, the joint projects with city stakeholders. I think it's very important to make good use of every healthy power you have in the city, of every good resource you have in the city, in order to promote lifelong learning philosophy. I don't know if I have answered your questions, Jürgen. I tried to present our case. Thank you.
Hello, madam. This is Dr. Johnson from India. Once again, I would like to ask you, madam, regarding the discussions that you have done or said about that. Do you maintain e-portfolios of the young adults, actually? Because you have taken the young generation and made them in participation. Therefore, to have a follow-up activity, have you maintained any e-portfolios of them? That would bring a tangible improvement, and also we shall have a cross-check of the improvement also. Have you done likewise any other improvement you have taken over, madam?
You will excuse me, but I would like to, I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm not sure, maybe someone would help me with this. Can you repeat?
Madam, regarding the digital literacy,
yes.
Regarding the digital literacy of young adults, actually, they have been involving in different various activities, actually, in your project. Actually, I have inferred from your discussion that you have involved more adult population for community participation. What I would like to ask you is that, this is just out of curiosity I'm asking you, have you maintained an online database of the young generation who have been involved in the community participation? Because in that way we will be able to have closer look of how their involvement is, and we will have a quick record of each and every adult. If they are having a lacunae, we will be able to address those issues. For that, I'm asking you, have you taken into cognizance of the technology also?
I'm not sure I understand, but I will try to answer your question. As I mentioned in Larissa, we developed a successful project for digital literacy for elderly. It's really successful because many senior citizens participate in this project with great enthusiasm. During 2023, we work together with experts in the field of digital literacy, and we plan to develop programs for youth and for adults regarding the everyday use of digital new technologies in for everyone. We'll try and always keep track of the participants, and as I said earlier, and we believe that new technologies and learning courses about new technologies are one of our main objectives of Citizens University. I'm not sure I answered your question. Is it okay with you?
Madam, it's correct, absolutely right. You have addressed over what I have asked, and you have rightly said also about the digital literacy that you have been imparting for adults as well as for the senior citizen. Rightly addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Well, regarding digital literacy and youth participation, we are discussing the two topics on this webinar, but we also have questions on the chat room. So including Professor Fatima, and Sharon, and Vicky. They're all discussing through the chat room as well regarding the country cases. Our time's up actually for our prepared webinar. So regarding the digital literacy and the youth participation, if you do not have any questions regarding that, we will conclude our discussion here. So the sharing of the countries, we also have the platform to the URL, but we are also developing a document bank. So all these different cases can be shared through different platforms in the future. So thank you once again for being here with us for the 2022 UNESCO GNLC International Webinar, sharing our experiences and discussing different matters. Thank you very much once again for your participation. We will end our webinar here. We have recorded our webinar and the discussion session. We will upload that on YouTube. Thank you very much once again.